We usually have New Zealand, UK. Good morning, everybody. Expository teaching of Judges chapters 7 through 9 this morning. So glad to have you here. We will get started here shortly. And we just want to make sure that we have everything fired up where we need it. Let's see. Boom. Pull open Facebook real quick. LA, or is that LA? Florida? Come on, Florida. Originally, I lived in Tampa for a little bit. Lived in Tampa for actually 2.5 years. You guys know where the Pearl Apartments are. That was my home base for my first company. Louisiana, New York. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. I see you working, Lord, just bringing people from all around the world. Come on, Jesus. All right, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, just thank you for another day. Thank you for waking us up today. Thank you for the glory of this, who you are, Lord, for loving us into people of love. Lord, as we read your word this morning, let your word permeate our hearts. Let your word speak to us in a way that maybe we've never been spoken to before. As we go into chapters 7 through 9 of the word of God, breathed by you. Let all of our fears be let go, and let us lead by faith today, Lord. I say this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's get started. So we're on Judges chapter 7. If you guys want to turn into your Bibles. We have Brazil. Absolutely incredible. All right, then Jerubbaal. These names are absolutely crazy. I was talking to Anna this morning. These names are wild. Who is Gideon? All the people that were with him rose up early and pitched in beside the well of Harod. So that host of Midianites were on the north side of them in the hill of Morah in the valley. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands. And lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand has saved me. Now therefore go proclaim the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many to bring. Bring them down into the water, and I will try for them there. And it shall be of them of whom I say unto thee, and this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And whomever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people unto the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth him, thou shalt set himself. Likewise, everyone that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed upon their knees to drink the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand. And all the other people go, every man unto his place. So the people took victuals in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men in the host of the Midianites, and beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, arise, get thee down into the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Purah thy servant down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterwards shall thine hands be strengthened to go down to the host. Then he went down to Purah, his servant, unto the outside of the armed men were in the host. And the Midianites at the Amalekites and the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. Their camels were without number, as sand by the seaside for multitude. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it, then fell, and overturned it, and the tent lay alone. And his fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, and a man of Israel. For his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped, and returned to the host of Israel, and said, arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers and lamps within pitchers. And he said unto them, look on me, and I do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that as I do, so shall ye do. When I blow with a trumpet, and all that are with me, when you blow the trumpets also on every side of the camp, and say the sword of the Lord and Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men were with him, came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle of the watch. And they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers there were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers, and held the lamps in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands blow, and they cried the sword of the Lord and Gideon. And they stood every man in his place around about a camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the hosts. And the host fled to Bethsheba and Zerath, and to the border of Abel-meholah unto Tebeth. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together in Naphtali and out of Asher, and all of Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all of Mount Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites, and take before them the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. And they slew Oreb upon the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. Oh man, well, you can see what happens with God. He literally told Gideon, hey, listen, you're going to do this, and then you're going to know exactly who your army is going to be. Now, have you ever thought about just asking God, when it comes to, God, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Ask, seek, knock. But so many times what we do is we say, you know what, God, I don't need your opinion. I don't need your guidance. I don't need your direction. I just need my own direction, because I'm going to lead by my flesh. I'm not going to lead by the Spirit. What we need to do is slow down and go into prayer and say, you know what, Lord, this is yours. Let's give it to you. And then let's wait, and let's be patient, and let's wait on the Lord and humble ourselves in front of God, because God has the best plan. Our plans are not always the best. Let's read into chapter 7. Israel's army was at the Harod spring. So this is at the bottom of the mountain called Gilboa. The army from Midian had camped across the valley called Jezreel. It was less than 5 miles from the Israelites. There were too many people from Midian. God told Gideon that there were too many people in his army. He reduced 32,000 men to 10,000 men. See, in Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 8, the writer said this: soldiers who were afraid must go home. Gideon's army would have good morale, which means confidence, if his soldiers were not afraid. In verse 3, the mountain's name is Gilead. Gilboa is probably another name for this mountain. Gideon tested how the other men in the army drank. He chose those who drank the water with their tongues. This seems a strange choice. Perhaps they used their hands as a dog and used it as its tongue. In this way, they got water, but they still stayed on their feet. They would be ready if something happened. The rest went down on their knees and get up quickly. However, the important thing may be the number of people. What they did may not be so important. Before this, God had showed Gideon something to give him confidence in God's promises. Now, God repeated this method. He sent Gideon to get a message. He gave him that message by the men from Midian. With his servant Gideon went into their camp, and he went at night. He went to a place where the best soldiers were guarding the camp. Excuse me. He went at night. He went to a place where the best soldiers were guarding the camp. The writer repeats the soldiers were very many in number. That shows how difficult the task was. Gideon heard a soldier who was describing a dream. In that dream, a loaf of bread knocked over a tent. The bread was like Israel's poor farmers. The tent was like the army from Midian. The soldier said that God had given Midian's army and the whole camp to Gideon. The men from Midian were afraid. God would certainly act. This message greatly encouraged Gideon. God chose what is weak. This will bring shame to what is strong. Gideon's army had no military skill. They could only blow a trumpet, they could only break a jar, and they shouted. Their attack came for about 2 hours before midnight. Most of the soldiers from Midian were sleeping then. Those that had come on duty had just woken up. The men from Midian heard the sounds of the trumpets. They were shouts. And there were sounds when the people were breaking the jars because of their fear. Midian soldiers fought against each other. They ran away to the east. They went down the valley and then went over the Jordan River. And all the towns in the list were other sides of the river. Zerah was 10 miles south from the place that they were in. Abel Maholah was 6 miles east, and Tebeth was 7 miles southeast. Now Gideon called for more help. Probably many that came had been in the original group. This was the group that consisted of the 32,000. The group of Israel soldiers who had weapons got ready. They captured the place where people crossed the river. They killed some leaders of the enemy's army, and then Gideon felt confident enough to call Ephraim's tribe for help. He asked them to control the places where people crossed the river. This would prevent the escape of Midian's army. And they killed 2 princes of Midian. Oreb means raven, a large black bird with a noise cry. And Zeb means wolf. A wolf is a wild animal like a dog. It lives in groups and it hunts in groups. There's something really big you want to understand here is that Gideon didn't have the best army. They had trumpets and jars. Okay, who's going to go fight with trumpets and jars? But then I want you to think about it like this too. If God is for you, who can be against you? And you can go up against anyone with God by your side. You see, I think a lot of the times we're very fearful of how we're going to be able to approach a situation, but we don't understand the power that is within us and works through us. You see, Gideon was nervous at a point, but then God then showed him somebody who showed him a dream. And that dream was to show him that, hey, listen, you might be nervous and you might be scared, but I am with you. And God is with you in anything and everything that you do. So do not be fearful. When you step in, have a spirit of boldness, understanding that God is always walking with you everywhere that you go. We have to be like Gideon, knowing that sometimes when we go up to a battle or sometimes we go into a place where we're not really sure how we're going to get through, we know that God is with us. Okay, Judges chapter 8. Now the men of Ephraim said unto him, why hast thou served us thus, that thou call us not, when thou wentest to fight in the Midianites, and they did sheed with him sharply? And he said unto them, what have I done now in comparison of you? It's not gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God hath delivered into your hand of the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison of you? Their anger was abated towards him. So that means that abated means resentment when he said that. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, and he and all the 300 men were with him faint, yet pursuing him. And he said unto the men of Succoth, give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint. I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the prince of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thine army? And Gideon said, therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with thorns of the wilderness, with briars. And he went up thence to Penuel, and spoke unto them likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him, and the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spake unto all the men of Penuel, saying, when I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their hosts were with them, about 15,000 men. And that were left all the hosts of the children in the east, for they fell in the 120,000 men that drew the sword. And Gideon went up in the way of them which dwelt in the tents east of Nobah and Jogabah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued them, and he took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomfited all the host. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught the young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired him, and he described him unto his prince of Succoth, and elders thereof, and even 70 men. which means 77 officials. And he came unto the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, and we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city and the thorn of the wilderness and briars with them, and he taught the men of Succoth. He beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. Then he said unto Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they, whom ye slew at Tabor? And they answered, As thou art, they are the one who resembled the children of a king. And he said, They were my brethren, even the sons of my mother, and the Lord liveth. If ye had saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said unto Jether, his firstborn, Up and slay them. But youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. And then Zebah on Zalmunna said, Rise thou, fall upon us, for as the man is, so his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. And the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Rule thou over us, both thou, thy son, and thy sons also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. Very, very, very important verse in Judges chapter 8, verse 23. It says, But Gideon told him, I will not rule over you, nor my son will rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. Guys, it is not your own doing. It is not your friend's doing. It is the Lord's doing. So let's just make sure that we're continuing to bring glory to his name. We're not taking the glory away from God. It's so easy to do in our lives. And Gideon said unto him, I would desire a request of you. If you would give me every man of the earrings of his prey, for they have golden earrings, that they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread in a garment and did cast therein every man of the earrings of his prey. And the weight of the golden earrings, and he requested, was 1,700 shekels of gold. Besides the ornaments and the collars and the purple raiment that was on the king of Midian, and beside the chains that were around the camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod thereof, and he put in the city, and even Ophrah and all of Israel went tithering and whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon to his house. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted their heads no more. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jeroboam the son of Joash went and dwelt in his own house, and Gideon had 70 sons. He had 70 sons of his own, for he had many wives. That's a lot of sons. And his concubine was in Shechem. He also bare him a son, who also he called his name Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in good old age and was buried in this sepulchre, which is the tomb of Joash's father, and Ophrah and the Abizarites. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again and went whoring after Baalim, and made Baal-berith their god. And the children of Israel remembered not Lord their God, who hath delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies of every side, neither shewed their kindness to the house of Jeroboam, namely Gideon, according to the goodness that he has shewed unto Israel. So what happened here? Completely forgot who the Lord their God is, all the things that God has done for them, every single miracle that they see, they still forgot who the Lord their God is. So in chapter 8, we learn that we should be careful. As we should remember the good things that other people have done. Ephraim's tribe wanted a quarrel. Perhaps they did not like the fact that Gideon had not called them to fight. Perhaps they wanted to share from the good that soldiers had taken after the battle. Gideon gave a gentle answer. He told Ephraim's tribe that their efforts had been much greater than his efforts. Contrast the way that Jephthah gave an answer to that same tribe that we'll read in Judges chapters 12, verses 1 through 3. So in these verses, the writer continues the story of Judges chapter 7, verse 25. Gideon and his men did not have much strength, but they continued to chase the army that had come from Midian. See, Gideon's 300 men had increased to 1,500 men. So they were now a force that could fight against Midian's army. The people of Succoth refused to help him because Midian's king Zebah and Zalmunna were still free. The people of Succoth were afraid of Midian's people, If the people in Succoth helped Gideon, the Midian's people might attack them. This is why they were afraid. So Gideon became more cruel. He made his promise he would make Succoth's people suffer pain because they had refused to help. Gideon would do this when he returned. The men in Pinel also refused to help. Pinel was the place where Jacob fought the angel that we read in Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 through 30. There was a tower there. People could escape the tower in an emergency. Gideon said that he would destroy the tower. The army from Midian reached Karkor. This was east of the Dead Sea. They thought that they were safe there, but Gideon made a surprise attack. He captured the kings and the army ran away. So he captured 2 kings. He punished the people that refused to help him. A young man wrote down the names of the leaders that refused to help. This is a very early reference to the words that people wrote. They used letters like A, B, and C. Gideon used this list so that all the leaders of Succoth would suffer pain. The results were probably death for them. Verse 18 shows that this matter had now become a personal argument between Gideon and the kings. He had managed the national crisis, but now he had to manage his private problems. They had killed his brothers. Gideon told his son to kill them. His son would have got great honor if he had done this. He did not do it because he was afraid. So Gideon killed them himself. They said, with courage, you do it. And he did what they had said. The shape of the camels and the ornaments was like a new moon. The Israelites wanted Gideon to be their king. His reply may have meant no, or it may have meant yes, but I will not be the king in every way. Some people believe that he accepted the power, but he did not accept the name. Other Bibles, other students, he said that God's spirit and God's authority. God did not want a king to rule over Israel's people at that time. If a king ruled, the authority could pass from the father's son without God's spirit. And God did not want that to happen. This is what we see in a lot of the world today. We have people who actually have the power, but don't put God's name behind it. They put their name behind it. Right? So you have the power, the authority, maybe the power, the authority of the Holy Spirit. You have this giftedness. You are anointed, like you are gifted by God. But then when it comes push to shove, you decide to bring glory to your name, and you don't want to bring glory to the one who gave you the anointing and the gifting in the first place. Gideon did not become king, but instead, I think I missed one. Gideon's reply may mean that God was really the people's king. The country was a theocracy. This meant that God had ruled over it. It was not a monarchy, a country that a king rules over. Perhaps he said no, but maybe he really meant yes. He aimed to show strong belief in his religion. He wanted to become popular with whom he would rule in the future. But in the verse 29, the writer says that Gideon went back home to live. Probably he stopped working and he lived with his family. You see, he had a lot of wealth, but everyone had a good opinion about him. Gideon did not become a king, but instead he wanted to be a priest. He made his own ephod, his priest coat. So he did not use the one at Shiloh. He covered the coat with very large amounts of gold. The gold came from the earrings that the Ishmael's people wore. Ishmael's people were people from Midian. They were a group of traders who bought and sold things. They also went from place to place and they lived in different places. The ephod came something that people praised. In this way, they were not obeying the law that forbade carved images. Gideon did not intend to go away from the Lord. Like Aaron did not intend to go away when he made the male cow from gold. Israel's people became unfaithful to God. This means that they praised the God in the same way as the Canaanites did. They had sex with priests and priestesses, female priests, but they completely defeated people from the Midian, and peace lasted for about 40 years. Gideon's life ended in an impressive way. He was very successful. He had many wives. He also had a woman that lived with her own family in Shechem. A king often had such women. Now, the name of his son, Abimelech, means my father is a king. Perhaps Gideon would have liked to be a king, however, he did not say so. People consider that Gideon and other 70 sons belonged to his family, but they considered that Abimelech belonged to his mother's family. Shechem city was in a valley between the mountains called Ebal and Gerizim. The land around the city produced good crops, and the city was on crossroads. These roads were routes on which traders would travel. Now, see, at Shechem, God first told Abraham who God was. Jacob's sons captured the city. It was a city where people would be safe. Those whom people had accused of murder could go there. People buried Joseph there. Joseph met with all Israel's people there before his death. Most people were there Canaanites, and they served Baal-berith, the god of agreement. Now the city belonged to the Canaanites, and people may have included it in Israel by the agreement. This would be the agreement of friendship. Perhaps Abimelech's mother was a Canaanite. After Gideon's death, the nation again served gods called Baals. They served the God of the agreement. The God was at Shechem. Perhaps this agreement was between the Israelites and the people in certain cities. Or maybe it was between the cities and their God. Israel's people had forgotten God's great acts. They would only turn to him when there was a crisis. To serve other gods was attractive to their senses. We are seeing this in the day and age that we live today. We have people that are only turning to God when they're in a crisis, but they're not spending time with God daily, giving him the devotion that he receives and he deserves. In chapter 6, Gideon was weak because he had lack of experience. He did not have confidence in himself. In chapter 8, he changed. He did what he wanted. He was not able to make judgments very well. He produced peace, but this depended on himself. It did not depend on God's law. The people were not grateful. Perhaps they thought that Gideon had enough rewards. So do you see what happened with Gideon? Gideon started out in a place where he didn't believe in the confirmation of the angel coming. He didn't believe at the fleece. He didn't believe any of this thing. And then he said, hey, listen, God was like, hey, listen, I'm going to bring you into battle. And you're going to defeat the Midianites. You're going to go in and I'm going to give you everything that you need. And then what happened was he got everything that he needed. He became really rich. He had a bunch of wives. He had all this different money. And then he became really full of himself. And this is where he depended on himself. He did not depend on God's law. And a ripple effect, the people weren't grateful. Because it all comes down to the leader. And every single one of you who are on here on the podcast or Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, wherever you guys are watching right now, you guys are all leaders in your own capacity. And you're all meant to lead people to a deeper relationship with Jesus. Maybe that's just planting a seed. Maybe you're harvesting, watering it, whatever it might be. But you're all leaders in your own way. I want you to always remember that. But I also want you to always remember to focus on God and don't get lost when it comes to actually leading. Don't get full of yourself. Don't get so ego and prideful that you forget about the one who actually gave you the leadership position in the first place. Okay, Judges chapter 9. And Abimelech, the son of Jeroboam, went to Shechem and to his mother's brethren and communed with them, with all the family in the house of his mother's father, saying, speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Jeroboam, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or the one that reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spoke unto him in the ears of the men of Shechem, and all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces, that's 70 shekels, of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, where there Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. And he went up unto his father's house of Ophrah, and slew his brother and the sons of Jeroboam, being 70 persons, that's 70 brothers, upon one stone. And notwithstanding yet Jonathan, the youngest son of Jeroboam, was left, for he did himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar with Shechem. And when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood up on the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice, and cried, and said unto them, hearken unto me, you men of Shechem, and that God may hearken unto you. The trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, reign thou all over us. But the olive tree said unto them, should I leave my fatness, where there be my honor of God and man, go to promote it over the trees? And the tree said to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to promote over the trees? This is all going to make sense very soon, guys. And then said the trees unto the vine, come thou and reign over us. And then this said the trees unto all the rainbow, come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, if truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. If not, let fire come out and bramble devour the cedars of the Lebanon. And now therefore ye have done truly and sincerely, in that ye have made Abimelech king. And if you have dealt with Jeroboam and his house, and you have done unto him according to the deservings of his hands. For my fathers fought for you in the adventures of his life far, and delivered you unto the hand of Midian. And ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons 70 persons upon one stone, and have made Abimelech the son of his maidservant king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye have dealt truly and sincerely with Jeroboam and his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. If not, let fire come out of Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Millo, and let the fire come out of the men of Shechem and from the house of Millo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled, and went to Beer, and dwelt there for the fear of Abimelech and his brother. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, then God sent evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. The cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jeroboam might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which abide in him in the killing of his brother. And the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him at the top of the mountains. They robbed all that came along the way by them, and was told to Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, came from his brother and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. And they went out to the fields and gathered their vineyards and trode their grapes, made them merry, went into the house of their God, and did eat and drink, and cursed Abimelech. And Gal, the son of Ebed, who is Abimelech, who is Shechem, that we should serve, and him who is not the son of Jeroboam, the Sebul is his offer, serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him? And would to God this people were under my hand, then would I remove Abimelech. And he said, Abimelech, increase thine army and come out. And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled, and he sent messengers unto Abimelech privately, saying, behold, Gal, the son of Ebed, and his brethren to become Shechem, and behold, to fortify the city against thee. And now therefore up by the night, and now the people of that is with thee, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, and the shall rise early, set upon the city, and behold, when we and the people that is him to come out against thee, and then mayest thou do them, and shalt find occasion. And Abimelech rose up, and all the people that were with him by night laid wait against Shechem in the 4 companies. And Gal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood at the entering gate of the city, and Abimelech rose up, and the people that were with him from lying in the wait. And when Gal saw the people, he said to Zebul, behold, there were people come down from the tops of the mountains. And Zebul said unto him, thou seest the shadow of the mountains, if they were men. And Gal spoke again and said, I see there come people down the middle of the east, and another company come along by the plain of Menomium. Then said Zebul unto him, where is now thy mouth, where thou saidest, who is Abimelech, and that we should serve him? Is not this people thou hast despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them. And Gal went out before the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him. And many were overthrown and wounded, even unto entering the gate. And Abimelech dwelt at Aramu, and Zebul thrust out Gal and his brethren, they should not dwell in Shechem. And it came to pass on the morrow that people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. He took the people, and divided them into 3 companies, laid wait in the field, and looked, and behold, the people were come forth, and the city rose up against them, and he smote them. Abimelech and the company was with him rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and the 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He took the city, slew the people that was therein, and beat down the city, and sowed it with salt, scattered salt all over it. When all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into the old house of God, Berith. And it was told Abimelech and all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. And Abimelech gat him up on the Mount Zalom, he and all the people that were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bow from the trees. That might be bow. And he took it and laid it on the shoulder. And he said it to the people that were with him, "What ye have seen me do, do make haste, and I have done." All the people likewise cut down every man's and his bow. I don't even know. Bouagh. And how do you say that word? Bow, and followed Abimelech and put them in the hold and set hold on the fire upon them. So all the men of the tower of Shechem died, also about 1,000 men and women. Then went Abimelech and Thebez and encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and thither fled all the men and women, and then all they out of the city and shouted to them and got them on the top of the tower. And Abimelech came unto the tower and fought against it and went hard into the door of the tower and burned it with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of millstone upon Abimelech's head and all to break his skull. Then he called hastily unto the young man in his armor bearer and said unto him, "Draw thy sword and slay me, that men may not say of me, a woman slew him, and his young man thrust him through, and he died." And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man into his place. Thus God rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father, in slaying his 70 brethren. And all the evil men of the men of Shechem did God render upon their heads. And upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. Well, so we see what we think was going to happen. God always wins in the long run. So chapter 9, Abimelech spoke to the people of Shechem. He said that he would be a better ruler than Gideon's other sons. He said he had done this because his father had not married his mother. Perhaps he was jealous of his brothers. They may have thought that he had no value as a person. Jephthah in chapter 11 had the same experience. The people in Shechem were quite willing to have a king that was a son of Gideon. Abimelech was also their own relative. Abimelech spoke to his uncles first, and they told people in Shechem, they agreed that Abimelech should be their king. They gave money to him. Then he could hire soldiers to help him. These soldiers could go and they could kill his brothers. They murdered their brothers on a stone as if they were animals for a sacrifice. People killed animals as a sacrifice when a king got his crown. When they were making the sacrifice, they also followed a ceremony. The people would follow the ceremony now, and this would make the soldiers' action look right. See, the ceremony happened at the holy oak tree. There was also a stone there. So people had put it up to remember something. Abimelech had a very small kingdom. It was not much bigger than the western area where Manasseh's tribe lived. The kingdom lasted only 3 years. It did not continue after Abimelech's death. Now Jotham, one son of Gideon, escaped from Abimelech. He stood on a high place on the mountain. There people could hear him, and he could easily escape from there. And this mountain was where the 6 tribes of Israel actually met. They said yes to the good things in the law. We read this in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 12. Some people also stood there in Joshua's great religious ceremony. We read this in Joshua's chapter 8, verse 30 through 35. Now Jotham told a story about nature. The story had a moral meaning. It was about trees that were choosing a king. So listen to this so you understand the story. The olive, fig, and vine refused to be the king. The meaning of the story was this: good men would not stop their work to become kings. The bush with sharp points accepted the invitation. The bush invited them to come into its shade, that is, its protection. But the bush was not able to protect anything in the heat of the summer. It could easily burn. It could destroy even the valuable tall trees that are always green. These trees were like the chief men of Shechem. And Abimelech could not give the people any protection and said he would cause their destruction. So Jotham reminded the men in Shechem how badly they have behaved towards Gideon's family. Gideon had risked his life for them. They had killed the other 70 sons they had appointed Abimelech as king. And Abimelech would be no use as a king. Jotham did not intend to show respect. He thought that Abimelech had no value. If they followed him, they would all die as a result. So the men in Shechem did not obey their agreement with Abimelech. They hid, and then they attacked travelers that were going through the country. This meant he would not get any tax money from them. So God changed things to suit his own plans. At the time when the people harvested grapes, they were excited. During that time, Ebed's son Gal opposed Abimelech's authority. Gal said to himself he still followed the customs, and he invited the people to serve the men of Hor. These people had lived in that area because Israel's people came. So to the servant men of Hamor meant to follow the old customs again. Hamor was the name of the ruler who had started the city. He had called the son Shechem, and the city too was called Shechem. Gal said also that Abimelech was the son of Jerubbaal. This was the most important thing because Jerubbaal was not from Shechem, and Abimelech was not really from Shechem either. So Abimelech was not a man of Hamor, meaning, although his mother was from Shechem, that was not so important. So in Gal's opinion, the people should not serve Abimelech. Gal said that he himself should be the leader. Then he would remove Abimelech. As you know, back in this time, it was all about who you serve, how you serve, what family you come from, all of those things. Like that's what mattered. And Abimelech had made Zebul the leader of Shechem. Zebul told Abimelech what happened. He told Abimelech to hide his army in 4 groups. Then nobody would find him. At sunrise, the groups came out. At first, Zebul cleverly stopped Gal from attacking him. He said that Gal was imaging things. Now, finally, Zebul could not hide the fact that Abimelech's group were attacking, so he invited Gal to fight them. He repeated Gal's own words back to him, but Gal and his army were not ready. So Abimelech's men chased and defeated them. Those that were still alive went back to the city. Abimelech went to Arumah. Zebul then removed Gal and his brothers from Shechem. Now, Abimelech destroyed Shechem. This was a punishment for those that opposed his leadership. Zebul controlled the town, but Abimelech wanted to make the people suffer pain. In this way, he could warn the people that lived in other places. The people went out in the fields to work. Abimelech came with 3 groups of men, and Abimelech, one group stopped them from returning to the town. The other 2 groups killed them. Then all 3 groups killed everyone in the town, and they threw salt as a sign of destruction. Abimelech burned the tall building in Shechem. The people were hiding there inside a special place where they praised their god El Berith. The people were trying to oppose him, but his action killed the people inside that tall building. Thebez was 10 miles northeast of Shechem. It was another city for those who fought against Abimelech. Again, he captured the city. He tried to destroy the tower as he had done at Shechem. The woman dropped a millstone on him and hurt him very badly. The stone was probably about 2 to 3 inches thick and 18 inches across. A young man was carrying Abimelech's weapons, and Abimelech asked the young man to kill him. This would avoid the shame that a woman had killed him. We learn from this story how God's judgment became true of Abimelech. God finally controls what happens at different times. These events show that. And I always say it like this: God is always in control. It's on you to take control, but he is not a remote control. So you can't press the backwards button and go back into your past, and you can't press the forwards button. You can't go into your future. We just press play every day, living in obedience and faithfulness to the God that we serve, because he is always in control. So appreciate you guys joining on podcast, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. That is Judges chapter 7 through 9. We'll see you